Okay, so we ready?
Yes, sir.
We will call to order the regular meeting of the West Basin Engineering and Operations Committee and special meeting of the Board of Directors. And to get us started, we see if we have a forum.
Happy to do so, Chair Alvarez. Director Tommy Fabai. Director Desi Alvarez.
Here.
Director Gloria Gray.
Here.
Director Donald Deere. And Director Scott Houston. Mr. Chair, we have a quorum of the committee meeting, but we do not have a quorum of the special meeting of the Board of Directors.
Okay, well, we will proceed with the committee meeting. Next item up is public comment. Mr. General Manager, do we have any public comment?
Assistant General Manager.
Oh, Mr. Assistant General Manager, I'm sorry, you were
You just got
promoted.
promoted.
EJ is on the line, I see. Mr. Chairman, we have not received any requests for public comment, though this meeting is being held both in person and virtually. If there is any member of the public that would like to speak, please indicate so by raising your virtual hand. And Mr. Chair, we have no hands raised.
Okay. So moving on, presentations. Mr. Assistant General Manager, do we have any presentations today?
But we do not have any presentation this evening.
All right, next item up then is the action calendar. And the first item is an amendment to the agreement for construction management services for the Edward C. Little Water Recycling Facility Solids and Handling Improvement Project. Mr. Assistant General Manager, would you please introduce that item?
Happy to do so, Chair Alvarez. Just to tee it up for Kevin Cullen, Engineer 3, let me start by saying, or just reminding the committee that this is, as you read in the title, an amendment to the construction management services for that project. However, the activities that you're going to hear about were more so related to the pre-purchased tanks that are part of this project and delivered to the contractor Kiewit. And so I'll let Kevin get into the weeds of that, but I just want to make that distinction that the services that are being considered today are somewhat out of scope from the original construction management scope services for AKM. And Kevin, I'll hand it over to you.
All right, Kevin, you can explain all of that to us now and simplify it.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. Good afternoon, Chairman Alvarez, members of the board. As mentioned, I'll be providing a brief update as well as a recommendation for amendment for construction management services on our Edward C. Little Water Recycling Facility Solids Handling Improvements Project. I do believe there is a presentation. I'll start first with just a brief project summary. You might recall we issued notice to proceed to the contractor last summer back in June of 2025. Our anticipated completion date for this project is January 13th, 2027. The construction contract currently holds a value of about $10.8 million. To date, we've been invoiced about $6.1 million with $4.7 million remaining. RFIs, we've received a total of 95, 94 of which have been processed, and submittals 132 with 123 currently closed out. Next slide, please. This slide is just a background recap on the scope of work for the project. Unless there's any particular questions, I'll skip to the next slide here. For some recent updates, here are construction photos of the recent progress. We have moved into a phase of installing conduit as well as pneumatic air lines across the site. You can see two examples there, conduit installation for our new feed pumps, as well as the air lines for those feed pumps as well. On the right-hand side is a photo of the drip tray doors that sit beneath the presses. During construction, we found that 1 out of the 4 total doors had some issues with its operation, so we conducted a brief investigation, and Kiewit was able to help us repair that door. Next slide. In these photos, you can see continued progress, electrical wires being pulled through that conduit, as well as the completed feed pump installation with the associated piping and flow meters. Additionally, we've started on the commissioning process. just at the beginning phase, developing the PLC program and the related HMI screens, which we have provided comments on and return those back to the contractor. Next slide, please. Now for the tanks. As background, the district procured two 21,000-gallon welded steel tanks, which are 2 of the 4 total sludge conditioning tanks as part of the solids handling process. The 2 we are replacing are original to the phase 1 construction. We pre-procured these tanks with an award back in August of 2024 with planned delivery for September 2025. The engineer's estimate for these tanks was $416,000. And ultimately, the base PO was issued at $325,000, and following a couple revisions, the current PO value is $375,000. To date, we've paid our NAWS $311,000, and there's about $65,000 remaining. As a reminder, following up on last month's information item, the progress to date has been challenging, to say the least. As indicated by the delayed delivery date, we've had multiple instances of having to send our inspectors and staff members up to the manufacturer's facility. And most recently, the tanks were delivered with noted nonconformances in June 2025 to ECO. Next slide, please. So before I dive into this slide, I just want to distinguish the differentiation in colors. The shaded gray is activities that have been completed to date, with the bold being ongoing or future activities. So our NAWS's planned work, once the tanks arrived to the site, they started work on July 14th, intended to complete the sandblasting and coating of the interior tanks, tops and bottoms, by the 27th. Those tanks were going to be moved to the foundations where the exterior would be completed. Ultimately, that date was not met, and the work is ongoing. So in terms of West Basin actions, we issued a formal notification of nonconformance and rejection of the tanks on July 2nd, shortly after they arrived at the site. We have received their submitted work plan for on-site work and established clear expectations and understandings for how their work needs to be performed, given that it's on the property at ECL, primarily with the focus of protecting the health and safety of on-site personnel and the nearby equipment. We set a deadline, which their work plan did adhere to, which was August 5th, and ultimately that date has surpassed. So ongoing, we have provided continuous inspection, primarily based on the past issues related to their quality and ability to meet timely deadlines. There has been continuous challenges related to the containment of the dust and debris related to the sandblasting effort. So multiple times now, staff has stopped work. Additionally, there's been some challenges related to environmental controls, performing the work with high humidity and heat as well. So nonetheless, all items within the contractor's control and means and methods. We have evaluated alternative options. However, the path forward that is in the best interest of the district is to continue with our NAWS as we are close to being done. Next slide, please. I just wanted to highlight some photos for context. These are photos of the tanks being delivered back on June 24th. Next slide. Following their delivery, we performed some simple checks, verification of the dimensions, inspections of the welding, and ultimately we did issue that nonconformance notice on July 2nd. Next slide, please. Here are some examples that were highlighted last month during the information item, but again, nonconformances included porosities within the welds, some cracked welds, incompleted work related to the anchor bolts, as well as a few other items. Next slide, please. All these nonconformances have been completed and repaired. So just some before and after pictures here showing the repaired welds. Next slide, please. More progress to date. So to date, both tanks have been partially completed interiors, coating interiors, as well as the exterior. One tank is all the way through to its top coat in its current position, and the second tank is shortly behind it. In the coming days, the tanks will be rotated and the currently inaccessible areas will be cleaned up. Next slide, please. Again, more progress photos showing the exterior of tank 1 all the way through to the top coat, as well as the containment that has been established for tank 2 and the ongoing sandblasting work. Next slide, please. Now for the recommended amendment. AKM's Construction Management Services had a base agreement of $688,000. There was Amendment 1 for time only, which just aligned their completion date with that of the construction schedule. And Amendment 2 was processed in April of 2026. The current agreement holds a value of $776,048 with a current authorized not to exceed amount of $791,984.80 and a remaining contingency of about $16,000. The amendment before the committee today is in the amount of $74,248 and is solely associated with the out of scope work to provide specialty NACE inspection services related to completing these tanks at a high quality level. So with that, I'll read the recommendation. Slide, please. The board authorized the general manager to amend agreement 3137 with AKM for construction management services in the amount of $74,248 for a new total not to exceed amount of $866,232.80. And with that, we're happy to take any questions.
Director Gray, do you have any questions?
No, thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, so let's talk about the AKM contract. Go back to the slide that had the summary of the contract. 2 slides before the end, I believe. So the original agreement was $688,000.
Correct.
And then we issued one change order for $87,880.
Correct.
And that was more than the contingency that was originally set aside, right? Set aside about 10%.
Correct.
And now we're asking for a second amendment to add another $74,000. And you mentioned that that was for specialty inspection and testing.
Correct.
Can we see a breakdown of what that is?
Sure. Yeah. A small breakdown is provided within AKM's amendment request letter, which is an attachment to the memo. The breakdown is
Pull that up. I don't recall the page right now.
Third one. Which page do you want, Kevin?
I believe it may be up a little bit within the body of the memo.
Yeah, just the
Yeah,
paragraph.
the memo?
The memo, yeah.
That's that's the request list. So my request on that is, can we get a breakdown of what those 288 hours are?
Sure. I think it is within the amendment. I misspoke, Desiree. Sorry. It's within the amendment request letter. I think it's at an assumption of 8 weeks of continuous inspection, 6 days a week. The work is being performed in a split between day and night shift. The contractor continues to shift their work schedule, but the assumption and based on the consumption to date, along with the expected completion date, the contractor has provided a completion date that they think is realistic at the beginning of September. Based on our inspector's observations, we've added 2 weeks beyond that. So in total, the request is at 8 weeks of inspection, 6 days per week, 8 hours a day at $171 an hour.
And this is it? We're done?
Sure hope so. I mean,
I'm asking for purposes of this particular agreement because there's still, we'll come back to the issue of the non-conformance. Have they assured all the non-conformance, or is this the one contract that we talked about that we're going to terminate for non-conformance?
Let me jump in on that one, Kevin. at this point, staff has considered alternative deliveries for this tank, and to finalize and finish it. And it does appear, unfortunately, that allowing Arnaz to continue that on-site work, is the best option for the district to make sure that these tanks ultimately get delivered. Right now, they're not on the critical path, but they are right on the cusp of becoming critical path items to the larger Kiewit project. And so after we looked at the cost and the schedule associated with someone else coming in and doing this work, it appears that despite their continued delays, Arnaz represents the quickest time frame. And so I say all that to say that I think we are expecting that they will be done by mid-September with this work. And at that time, this budget extension will take us through that. But if there are continued delays or additional inspections needed after that, it is possible that we come back. I would just remind the committee that these services were not scoped originally for AKM. In hindsight, perhaps we should have scoped for the CM to actually do, site inspections for the purchased equipment, but that didn't happen. And so all of this additional work is out of scope and additional. It's the dollar values you're seeing are based on actual numbers that have been done to date, but also an estimate of those continued hours through September. So about 1 more month's worth of work. So I go through all that just to remind the committee that we certainly hope that this is all there is for AKM with respect to the tank project. But as you were pointing out, the amendment number 2 that did add monies to the contract, it did not refresh the contingency. And so we still only have remaining $15,000 or so in contingency on the project. And we are seeking to keep that intact so that if we do need to use that contingency for AKM for other activities associated with the contract, that's available. But as of right now, I would say or suggest that we've only got about 5 months left of the project, and whether we exhaust that contingency or not, I would hope we're not going to.
Okay. So AKM, let's split this. Let's go back to this amendment. This amendment is for the specialty inspection services that they provided.
The additional
The daily
specialty inspection services specifically related to the pre-purchase tanks.
So are we done inspecting the tank?
No, we think we have about at least another month.
And this amendment includes time for that other month.
Correct.
So with this amendment, we will be done with the tank inspection. And we will have determined that they have brought the tanks into compliance.
Yes, that is the intention.
Okay, I understand the intent. I'm just asking, I want more certainty because and I know it may be difficult, but how much more work is there really left? You've been making the corrections now for a couple of months, several months.
Mm-hmm.
So they got to be nearing the end.
Right.
And which is what you guys are saying. So if we're nearing the end, we should be able to say another 3 weeks and maybe allow an extra week in there, if you will. So does this provide that time?
Yeah, this should have a level of comfort that we will be done by the middle of September. I think the hesitation you hear in making an absolute guarantee is that this company has not ceased to amaze me. Is that the right word? They have seemingly failed us at every step of the way, and I won't be surprised if something else pops up. But to your point, the work they've completed to date, the progress that they've made, and as near as we can project, and I think even hearing from the inspectors, we're we're on pretty good footing right now. But again, a lot of the delays on site are related to the fact that they are working on site. They're not ideal conditions for coating. They have struggled to create even less than ideal conditions for coating. They've pointed at humidity factors that have caused them delays. And so all things considered, we do hope and believe that they will be done by middle of September. But
So, our NAS is done by the middle of September. Do we need to, are we gonna come back and ask for more money for AKM?
if Arnaz is continuing, it would really depend on where they're at, right? If they're still in the process of coding and we feel that inspection is still needed, yeah, I would say that we want that inspection, because after all of this issues we've had with these tanks, the one thing that AKM Specialty Inspection is providing us is assurance that when we put those tanks in place, they were done to spec and they were done appropriately. And without that inspection, when we do take delivery of those tanks and put them into our system, we have less guarantees that that coating is gonna stick. No pun intended. But with the inspection, at least we're feeling comfortable that despite the delays, despite the work conditions, that the product that we're going to get delivered is going to be fit for purpose.
So there's 4 more months before the project is completed,
January of 27.
and we think we'll be on track for that.
Currently, the schedule shows on track. I mean, we have all of commissioning before us, which is a pretty critical juncture for the project. So, with the inability to predict the future, we're currently on track. There's a few big items before us, but I think we're in a good stand.
So their AKM is committed through this January to complete the project.
For the bulk of the project, yes.
Except
And
for
probably
this
a little-
particular item.
A little longer for that CM kind of wrap up.
Yeah, close out.
So outside of additional NACE inspection, we are not gonna come back and ask for any more money for AKM.
I'm gonna look to Kevin to suggest what.
I
How
can never
large the
guarantee the
outstanding
future that another issue won't come up on the larger project, but we're doing all of the due diligence now and planning efforts to ensure that we have a smooth commissioning phase. And things are looking all right.
Yeah, I will say, Director, that by all accounts, this project so far, despite this tank issue, has been hugely successful. I think partnership with Kiewit has been demonstrated to be one that has benefited this project. Maybe I'll put Kevin on the spot to remind me of the dollar values that Kiewit has saved us through value engineering and other options that they've afforded us during the previous portions of the project.
Yeah, we've had a few good savings to date. I think in total, I mean, none of the Kiewit contingency has been used. In fact, I think our one change order that we processed is a negative credit back, about $100,000. We're working on a second one, which will also be a negative. We worked through a few big tariff issues at the front end of the project, so those were good successes.
But I mentioned that only to say this has been a speed bump, but the overall project has progressed very well. Promises to be a very successful project on time, under budget, dare I say. And yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, so Director Gray, if you don't have any objections, we'll go ahead and proceed with moving this forward. All right. Let's move on to our next item 5B, which is award of construction services for the sodium hypochlorite tank replacement project at the Juanita Melinda McDonald Carson Regional Water Recycling Plant.
Thank you, Director. As you noted, this item is an award of construction services for the sodium hypochlorite tank at the Juanita Melinda McDonald Carson Regional Water Recycling Plant. I just wanted to say that. I'd like to note that with the new contract we have in place with the Marathon Refinery, As of September of 2025, they are paying us a fixed capital recovery fee that will cover projects just like this when needed. And so I'll let Alejandro Cano Alvarado talk about the specifics of the project, and she is an engineer one.
Thanks, Ari. Good afternoon, members of the committee. This action item begins on packet page 26 of the agenda and relates to the CIP bulk chemical storage tank improvement project at the Juanita Millender McDonald Carson Regional Water Recycling Plant. I also want to say that.
Pretty good.
Call it GMM from now on. So at the GMM plant, the sodium hypochlorite is one of 11 chemical storage tanks originally constructed in the early 1990s, and has since reached the end of its useful life. Sodium hypochlorite is a critical chemical at the plant operations. It is essential for boiler feed water production, minimizing microfiltration, membrane fouling, and also supporting the cleaning processes for both MF and the RO membranes, as well as it provides breaking point chlorination for the nitrification process. On August 2022, the original 8,000-gallon fiberglass reinforced plastic sodium hypochlorite tank experienced a structural failure that resulted in a leak. To ensure uninterrupted operations, staff installed a temporary rent-for-rent high-density polyethylene tank of a smaller capacity, about like 6,900 gallons, which has remained in service since the failure of the original tank. Following an evaluation of operational requirements, constructability, and long-term durability, as well as return of investment, and the increased demand after the completion of the CEMF Phase 2 project, it was determined that replacing the failed tank with a bigger capacity FRP or fiberglass tank with about like 9,100 gallons will provide a permanent and reliable solution. Upon completion of the design, the project was temporarily placed on hold while West Basin negotiated an agreement with the Marathon Refinery to secure finance for the project. As Eric mentioned, these negotiations have concluded. The agreement has been fully executed. So I want to reiterate here that this project is fully funded by the Marathon Refinery through their fixed payments. After the completion of the construction bid package, a request for bid was issued via the district's procurement system, OpenGov, on July 2nd of this year. The RFP was also advertised on the West Basin website, public purchase, picobids.com, and LinkedIn. A non-mandatory pre-bid meeting was held on July 16 via Microsoft Teams. 9 companies attended the pre-bid. The pre-bid was followed by an on-site job walk that took place on July 23rd of this year. 4 bids were received via OpenGov on July 30th. The bid results are presented on packet page 27 under table 1. The lowest responsible and responsive bidder is Magda Mechanical Company Inc., MMC Inc., with a bid of $467,300. The engineering cost estimate was approximately $300,000. I do want to point out here that the estimated cost has been updated to identify the biggest discrepancies and changes between the original engineering cost estimate in comparison to the bid amounts that were received during the solicitation. So with this update, it was identified that the primary change was in the cost of the manufacture of the fiberglass tank. This tank cost inflation can also be observed in the solicitation overview included under attachment A, packet page 29. For this, and given that the project is located in a chemical containment area that was built in like 27 years ago, staff recommends to include a 15% contingency or about like $70,000 to address any unforeseeable conditions. We typically request or ask a 10% contingency for this type of field conditions that are unknown. But at this point, we have done our due diligence to identify all conditions. However, given that the containment, the chemical containment area, it's all the facility. We might need to chase some underground wiring once the field work begins. So the additional contingency will provide staff with a proper buffer to provide a quick response if the work is needed. This is particularly important because the project for the construction of the construction period of the project is less than 3 months. So we do have the pre-construction phase in which the requirement of the tank will take place, reviewing and approval of the shop drawings. And once the tank is available, then we'll move forward with the mobilization and construction phase. So because of the short period of the construction phase, there might not be sufficient time for us to bring back the matter to the board for additional funding without potentially affecting the project schedule. The 50% contingency, just to reiterate, will provide staff with the flexibility to address any unforeseeable failed conditions and act quickly while maintaining the construction schedule and avoiding unnecessary delays. So with that, I will read the recommendation that the board authorize the general manager to enter into an agreement with MMC Inc. for construction services in the amount of $467,300 plus a 15% contingency for a total not to exceed amount of $537,395. So with that, I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Director Gray, do you have any questions?
No, I do not. Thank you.
I don't have any questions. Still think that I'd probably leave the temporary tank alone, but we've had that discussion before. And I am amazed for the bypass, it's gonna be $190,000. No, $185,000. So it's a pretty generous contract for the work that's being done. Hopefully they won't need any of that contingency. So Director Gray, if you don't have any objection, we'll go ahead and move this forward.
Yes, that's fine. Thank you, Chair.
Chair Alvarez, if I might, we still need a verbal confirmation from Director Gray about 5A.
Oh. Director Gray, I don't know if you heard that. Going back to the previous item, I had mentioned that if you didn't have any comments, we would move it forward. But and I assumed that your silence meant you didn't have any comment, but apparently you have to say something in the positive that you do
Okay.
not.
Yeah, I support moving it forward with you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so then we'll move on to our last action item, which is an award and agreement of Tall Engineering Professional Consulting Service. So, Mr. Assistant General Manager,
Thank you, Chair Alvarez.
you have present that one.
This run-of-the-mill item is going to be presented by Veronica Gobea, Engineering Supervisor, and this will look familiar because it is that time of year. We do these approximately every 3 years, depending on whether they're extended or not. So I'll hand it over to Veronica to go through the outcome.
Thank you, Eric. Good afternoon, Chairman Alvarez and board members. Please follow me to item 5C, which starts on page 31 of the overall package. West Basin Municipal Water District uses on-call engineering services to support effectively for capital improvement program. The existing engineering on-call services that we have currently will expire this year. And we, as Eric mentioned, we're in the process of getting the new consultant support. We have gone through the steps to advertise and evaluate consultants, and we're happy to be here to provide the results from the evaluation and our recommendation. To emphasize, the engineering consulting services are used to support the delivery of the capital improvement program, which includes like new infrastructure, rehabilitation projects, customer development, and as the production team has also been incorporated into the engineering department, we have also included a task order, or not a task order, but like a scope of work to incorporate those activities into these particular engineering services. In the past, the engineering department used to have its set of on-call services, and the operations department used to have those on-call services too for production. So now we have combined those scope of works into one, and basically that's the scope of work that was advertised for these on-call services. As part of the process, on June 15, we issued the solicitation for proposals. And on June 24, we had the pre-proposal meeting where there were 31 companies that attended. On July 14, we had 14 proposals being received. The requests for proposals were advertised using OpenGovs, Public Purchase, Beacon Bid, LinkedIn, and also Chambers of Commerce. In addition, we started outreach at various events that we had a display table. Overall, we had 9 companies that were new and 5 companies that we are familiar with. During the review of the proposals, we reviewed proposals for several areas, which included completeness, quality, qualifications, key personnel, their technical approach, their methodology, and the fee schedule. And we were also looking into the small local business enterprise, as well as their subs qualifications for that, where they could have gotten up to 7 points on total. 3 for small businesses, 3 for local businesses, and 1 point for sub-consultants that could demonstrate that they had a small business or local business. So that was a total of 7 points. So out of those proposals, there were 9 proposals that were shortlisted for interview. Please know that there was 1 proposal that out of the 14 was disqualified, given the fact that they mentioned on the proposal that they were going to be utilizing sub-consultants. However, unfortunately, they didn't display any of the names. So there was no DIR number. So following the legal consultation, that proposal was disqualified. But going back to the proposals that were shortlisted, we did interview 9 companies over 2 days on August 6 and August 10. And the interview took place here in the district with West Basin staff and also a water member that helped us to interview the companies. The overall results are shown on table 2. Please note that the original board packet had a typo on their AKM consulting engineers. The total point, the decimal point shows us 105.4. It's a 105.5. And GHD, the total score show 106.5, and in reality it's 105.1. There has been a revised table. I'm not sure it was able to be produced for this board, but if not, we'll be able to address for the board meeting. But again, despite that typo, the results have not changed in regards to our recommendation. In the past, we have awarded 5 companies. Prior to the last 3 contracts, we have awarded 5 companies and maybe 6 companies in one of the on-call services due to a tie. This time, we would like to recommend 7 consultants, and the reasons being that these results were pretty close to each other on the last, on getting to companies 5, 6, and 7. We also have expanded the services, so not only they're going to be covering the capital, the R&R, but also the technical operational component of it. And also, we believe that all these companies do have a level of expertise that will make them also more competitive among each other. Remember, like, even though they are on-call services that are being selected, and because they are not pre-qualified to do the work that we are looking for, they also still need to compete with each other when we have a task order that needs to be responded, and those proposals to get evaluation. So having a bigger pool probably will increase the potential to get more competitive costs. The pool budget will remain as at 3 million with to be shared among all the consultants, and the task orders will be limited to $350,000. There's 3 attachments. Attachment A includes the summary of the consultant, diversity, and inclusion breakdown. Attachment B includes the full evaluation summary, and attachment C, the solicitation overview. So with this, I will read the recommendation that the board authorize the general manager to enter into agreements with AKM Consulting Engineers, Ardura Group, Brandon Caldwell, GFT Infrastructure, GHD Incorporated, Hazen and Sawyer, and the Data Incorporated for on-call engineering professional consulting services, each for 3-year term beginning September 1st, 2026 through August 30th, 2029, with a not to exceed contract value of $3 million to be split among 7 consultants. With this, I will take introductions.
Hey, thank you. Director Gray, do you have any questions? Very good. Can you go to page 36? So walk me through this one, please.
Sure. So what we're trying to do here is basically just to look at the participation of the small businesses, the local businesses, as well as the sub-consultant. So on the first column under consultant firm, we have listed all the consultant firms that submitted a proposal. So that's basically the prime consultant. And the location is where their offices are located. Following that, we have gone into the prime SBE, which means is the prime small business enterprise. So a yes meaning yes they are, and no meaning no they're not. Same thing with the prime local business enterprise, which is LBE. As that column basically shows whether they are local or not local. In other prime certifications, that will mean that they may have another certification that is under the certifications that they submitted. Again, all of these are basically being taken from the certifications that they have submitted at the time of the proposal. So some of them have identified themselves as having a small micro and small businesses certification. Sub-consultants, this is the participation level and other certifications that also they have provided. So this column basically provides the general overview whether they do qualify under that particular characterization, as well as the type of certifications that they may have. So for example, outside the small business and local business, which is the typical that are more commonly seen. We have also identified that some of them can be woman-owned, they are micro business, disadvantaged veterans, business enterprises, also woman-owned, and minorities.
So Director, if I may, just a reminder that this RFP was produced and advertised prior to the changes to the program that were just executed last month. And so one of the reasons you won't see the Disabled Veterans Incorporated here was just that they came later. But as you see in the table, Veronica's made an effort to identify those different types of certifications that each of these companies have.
But those are the sub-consultants. The primes don't have it.
I saw, well, other than the micro, yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of questions. One is, what's a micro?
So
Business?
it's small businesses. So yeah, we had that, the characterization
It's
like small, maybe like less than 5 million, like very small.
I hadn't heard that one before.
No, yeah, we went through the homework on trying to identify.
I mean, is that now recognized as a small business classification?
Do you know who the certification is through?
I can definitely follow up with that, but yeah, there is a certification that is basically provided at the time of the submittal. So it does describe specifically as a small business or micro business too.
Because I see that, all three firms that are micro businesses are not recommended.
So the some of the sub-consultants do have those qualifications.
And some of the subs, but the three that are small businesses themselves or micro businesses are not. All right, so back to kind of the point of what we had the discussion with the point assignment and so on. So how does the points add up here, and how do I see that and then the table that is the final rank?
Yes, so I believe that there is a table under attachment. Mhm.
So in that table, that's page 37.
Mhm.
So we have incentive, SBE, LBE, SLBE. So these are the points that you're giving. That's how this works.
Yes.
So
Under
this
the
is
old.
additional points above and beyond.
Right.
They're basically point totals, and then we added that on. That's where I was at. Okay. And SBE.
So 3 points for SBE and 3 points for LBE if they qualify. And any subs that fall under those SBE, LBE, they get additional 1 point. So for a total of 7 additional points.
All right, so on the local business enterprise, how do we define that again?
So local business enterprise is anything that is within the 25-mile radius from headquarters office. And there's on our website, we have a link that we actually also advise for the consultants that are submitting proposals to look into, because it basically identifies the zip codes that are considered being within the local business area. So entering their zip code or their address will let them know whether they are within the local area or not. That's also a way for us to review that information.
I'm not arguing for this, but why does AKM get, I shouldn't say why, I see that AKM gives 3 points for SBE, but they don't get anything for LBE.
For local business, because they are
Because they're
nearby.
located down the street, at least within that same 25 mile.
AKM, it's in Irvine, so it's outside the local
30
business
minutes.
areas.
So is Tetra Tech.
Tetra Tech has an office in Pasadena. That's the office that they reported for the on-call services.
I always forget they have an office in Pasadena, and I shouldn't because I worked in that office. But that was many years ago. I always think of them as the Irvine office.
No, yeah, trust me, we did check. We went through that whole review of the location, the certifications, their addresses, their
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Still get a kick out of the way we do the incentive program. But anyways, thank you for the explanation. So Director Gray, you have to respond verbally. Do you have any objections?
I will.
with this?
No objections. Thank you, Chair. I support it. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
So we'll move this one forward. All right, that brings us to information calendar.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair,
And-
before you start,
Yes,
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I
go ahead.
have to leave the call in a few minutes, so we're done with the action calendar.
we are done with the action calendar, and we may skip over the information calendar if you're gonna leave us. But we'll at least go over to the first one.
Oh,
But
okay,
thank you
I'll
very
stay
much,
on.
Director Gray.
Thank you. I'll stay on for a few minutes. Thank you.
Okay, so, let's go ahead and, on the information calendar, at least, put over 6A, the amendment of operations and maintenance services agreement with Jacobs for the recycled water treatment plant. And this is the first amendment that's coming up.
That's correct. You may be surprised to learn that it's been almost 18 months since we negotiated that contract with the ad hoc committee, and they've been in operations for almost a year as of September 1st. And so you'll recall that as part of this contract structure, it does require us to amend the budgetary values every single year. We'll come back to the board with the new cost structure for the upcoming year. Given that this was the first contract that we've ever executed in this nature, we're also looking to take an opportunity to correct or to improve any language that was vague or just really anywhere that we might have missed and can improve upon. And so Suzanne is going to talk about the specific areas that you might see in the next month's board cycle when we do bring forward the item for an approval from the board. So I'll turn it over to Susanna Lee, Manager of Engineering.
Good afternoon, Chairman Alvarez and members of the committees. As Eric already mentioned that this is an information item, and as we're coming up to the first annual anniversary of the new contract, we've been in negotiation discussions with Jacobs for a few months, and we were hoping that this would be an action item, but there's still outstanding discussion points that we need to finalize. Just for background, the contract structure itself, as you are aware, different from the old time and materials. There are partial fixed payment components, including mixed management fees, operation fees, and fixed maintenance fees. Separately, we have reimbursable categories such as unplanned maintenance and pass-through items. And what's added into this Jacobs contract or this new O&M contract structure is including KPI program that will cover, help us to improve the monitoring of the performance, covering safety, regulatory, and compliance, and obviously water quality and asset management. As Eric mentioned, this is our first year into this 5-year contract, and we remember when we came to the board in March, we had little time that afford each party to do a really proper vetting of all the contract languages. So what Eric mentioned about areas that we want to come back to modify is to really to make sure the execution of the contract, ensuring the execution of the contract makes sense. And there are areas that right now is kind of fall into the gray area, and we're just trying to tighten up some languages to make sure that we can make it enforceable and easy to account for those KPIs and changes. So as mentioned in the memo, one of the area that we're discussing obviously is the compensation bucket, the annual pricing update, and that for the fixed payment, that is strictly based on the CPI and ECI formula as discussed in Exhibit C. And also there are reimbursable items and reimbursable maintenance. Those are to be discussed based on their first year operations and what the needs are. And so that's RS-12A will be updated. And the other major component that we're in discussions are the chemical guarantee pricing. So there are two components with the chemical pricing guarantee, including mainly the usage, and so to optimize to promote better practices and helpful to minimize the unnecessary chemical usage. So that's in Exhibit F. Another component with that pricing is the unit pricing that we discussed. Jacobs has better buying power, and there, as we already made aware that some of the chemical contract pricing is a lot better than what we have seen in the past, when West Basin procured those bulk chemicals. We are still working out and waiting for what this first year reconciliation amount is like. But from some of the early discussions that we already have, we are seeing savings for at least a couple of chemicals. So we're finalizing those calculations shortly. The other side, as we mentioned, is the practical and operational piece for this agreement. Staff and Jacobs use this year one as a kind of like a real world test of how the contract is currently set up and see how it's working for both sides. And we identify several areas where the clear language will help us to manage the contract better and going forward. And example, there is like new permits and water quality requirements. What does that mean when there are additional requirements such as new refinery agreements in place? What does that mean in terms of impacts to operations to Jacobs? So we're just clearing up those agreements language in the contract. Other areas that, as highlighted in the tables, include measurement of methodology for a couple of performance metrics, plant demand satisfactions. How do we reconcile what is meeting and not meeting those rates? Is it based on annual basis, a weekly basis? Those are the details that are in the amendment language that we're contemplating. And also one of the big thing discussion point is the procurement policy. What form procurement policy? Right now, we're including the whole entire West Basin procurement policy. As you recall, in August, we came back to the board to ask for a waiver to allow for some of those larger chemical vendor contracts that Jacobs already have in place to ensure that they can give us better pricing. So that is another big discussion point, and we're waiting on their suggested language on how to make it work more efficiently on year 2 to 5. Another one is the key personnel provisions that is included in Exhibit B for the contract. We're proposing to adding a second layer of management team to that key personnel role, because we're finding that perhaps that position is crucial to ensure that some of those requirements being adhered to. So none of these changes, proposed amendments, changes the overall structure or the intent of the agreement that the board approved last year. It really is just helping us to tighten the language and then help us to execute the contract to the full intent. So our expectation is that Jacobs will finalize these outstanding pieces in the coming week, and then that we will be coming back to the board in September to request for the full amendment. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Is Director Gray still with us? Director Gray, do you have any questions?
No, I do not. Thank you. And I'm going to have to go, but thank you very much. Thank you.
So I understand that this was just an overview, and that we do have an agreement to review the contract annually and make amendments and changes to it. And some of that is financial changes. So it seems like quite a few of these will lead to financial changes that, from what I'm anticipating, are all going to be increases.
TBD.
Um,
And I say that because, Director, the fixed prices do allow for an automatic escalator.
right,
However, you may recall the structure related to chemicals. We are paying 1/12 of the estimated annual budget for chemicals We're still going through the process of reconciling the actual cost compared to what we paid. And there is some suggestion, although I can't commit to too much at this point, that our the price of chemicals may be lower than what we've been paying all along. And so what that may mean for next year's budget is that potentially there is a reduction in the overall chemical budget.
I know we came to the board, as part of the budget cycle that we already put in place what is estimated for this this fiscal year. So we know that whatever amount they come back will not be higher than what is included in the budget. And to what Eric mentioned, like we put in a $15 million, if I recall correctly, chemical pricing. So it will be interesting to see if any of the unit pricing or optimization that we've been talking about will impact that $15 million budget on the chemicals. So TBD.
I think it's fair to say that overall, the total contract value likely will go up, but by how much is still very much a work in progress.
I guess I'm a little bit less concerned about the chemical pricing because I thought we had a pretty good formulation for how that would be determined.
We do. However, you may remember that they guaranteed us a certain consumption of chemicals. Now, keep in mind that they're guaranteeing it based on previous two-year period. And as we get further into this contract, that guaranteed amount is going to be less of a savings and more of just a consistent value, right? And so meaning, as an example, they guaranteed us sodium hypochlorite, a reduction by 15%, and that represented a pretty significant cost savings. It does appear that they are achieving that, but they're not going to see reductions by 15% every year.
Right, but we're going to see that they're not going to come back and backtrack and say, we guarantee you a 15% reduction in sodium hypochlorite. We couldn't achieve it.
Correct. But
There's
it
no
may,
backtracking.
as the basis year that we look at gets more into their own operations, their willingness to guarantee that reduction changes because they won't be able to reduce. It's going to be a diminishing return at some point where, with effective and optimized operations, you can't continuously save that 15%. So they'll guarantee some value, but it may not represent a 15% reduction.
Maybe there is a difference in the way I understood it was, we're going to guarantee you 15%. Now, whether they achieved it or not, I said, that's your guarantee. And I understand that once they've achieved whatever they achieve, that's probably going to be it for a long time.
Yeah, so that
They
was for
made all
year
the
one.
corrections that they could make.
So the positive note of that is that in year one, I think they've done a pretty good job, and that's the process that Susanna and Mario are working through now to reconcile all those numbers and to make sure that where they hit their guarantees, they get credit for that, and where they didn't, we get that credit. But in year two, again, they're not saying, well, we're not guaranteeing any sort of reduction in year two. They're just not, at this point of the negotiation, they're saying, I can't guarantee 15%. So maybe it's 10, maybe it's 8. They are still willing to entertain
As
additional
long as there's no
reductions.
backtrack.
Yeah, no, we don't expect them to come back and say, well, now we got to use more chemical.
Right.
However, I would, in their defense, they didn't know everything about this plant when they proposed, and now they do. And so I think our costs going into this year are going to be much more realistic. There's one other thing I was going to add about their operational costs, and it escapes me. So.
All right, so that's chemical. I'm not quite sure this is ready to come back to the board for approval of an amendment next month. I think we need to see a little bit more detail than what is in this presentation today.
Well, our
And
expectation
maybe
is,
along, if you go back to when we were doing the selection process and so on, that we went back and forth. There was a lot more information that was being provided, and I think we need to see at least that step. So, for example, let's jump ahead to the next page where you talk about, there's the key personnel. So we're gonna designate some additional personnel.
No, I
It's,
mean, just put it as a key personnel rather than adding a position. So that we have more oversight in terms of when there's change in staff.
so of the 57 FTEs that they owe us under this contract, there are key personnel, a handful, I think 4 or 5 that are designated as non-negotiable. These are the folks that we want to make sure are always in place, that we want to make sure that when they do lose one, that we are part of the process to replace them. And so what the item here is we would like to add
Second tier.
the second tier, the assistant PM into that. We didn't capture that in the original contract. We're suggesting that the assistant project manager should be included as a key personnel. And so that's really all that means, is that we're just clarifying that aspect of the contract. And in this case, it would be something that we are seeking to add into the existing contract.
Is what the idea behind that is, we want to make sure those personnel that are dedicated or identified to be on site projects, that they are on at least close to 100% dedicated to the project. And if they're not, then they come back and ask for additional, then we're gonna push back, right? I mean, if they're not doing all the work.
So, for example, then on that one, we're talking about no financial impact.
Yeah.
Just that-
Correct.
Right.
Just that the key personnel list
Yeah.
is expanded.
Correct.
Instead of 6, it'll be 10 or whatever the number.
Correct. And there are a number of those things, albeit minor tweaks and adjustments to the language. Another example is that when we put in the requirements for water quality that they have to produce at the JMM facility, that was based on the previous contract. Well, in September of last year, we renegotiated that. There's some subtle changes to the water quality requirements that we committed to Marathon for. And so we'll seek to include those new requirements within this contract. I'd say that the substantial amount of work is just those clarifications. We've had a year now of looking and using this contract. We've identified a number of things that just weren't clear or otherwise weren't perfect. And so we want to clean those up so that by the time we get to the end of this 5-year contract, we should have a pretty stout and robust contract that can be used either for the extension or if the board so chooses to rebid this, and we could do that with a better contract vehicle. To your point earlier, though, that we won't be ready, staff anticipates having a agreed upon amendment, staff to staff agreed upon amendment by the September board. We would expect and anticipate to have a more thorough and detailed presentation at the September E&O committee, in which case it would be more than a table, it would be a PowerPoint, and we'll walk you through as long as you would like to understand these issues, whatever's left on the table at that point. Right now, I think this table really just represents kind of the things that we're still talking about or have talked about, not necessarily what ultimately is going to be put into the amendment by the end of it. So, and going back to that key personnel, that's a negotiation. At the end of it, they could theoretically, we could ultimately not make that change. So that wouldn't be in the September presentation. But rest assured that whatever changes do get reflected in that amendment, and in particular the cost structures, we will bring that to the committee and allow you enough time to pick it apart.
Okay. All right,
This is just a preview.
so the next item is the update on the professional engineering design services, RFPs, proposal for PLC replace. Who's gonna do that one?
That is going to be Jason Kung, Operations Analyst 2 today, Chair Alvarez.
Good afternoon, Director. Thanks, Eric. The Torrance Refinery Water Recycling Plant relies on several PLCs or programmable logic controllers, for short, to monitor and control critical treatment processes. The PLCs supporting the nitrification and biofor processes were originally commissioned in 1995, and the PLCs supporting reverse osmosis were added in 1998. These control systems are currently at the end of their useful life, and replacement components are becoming increasingly difficult to obtain. We've also experienced multiple power supply failures within the last 5 years, which highlights the growing reliability risk of continuing to operate this aging equipment. A failure of one of these PLC systems could interrupt our ability to provide nitrified water for the refinery's cooling towers or RO treated water for boiler feed. Failure involving multiple PLCs could result in a more significant disruption to treatment operations and recycled water deliveries to the Torrance Refinery or TORC. To address this risk, staff received approval from TORC to move forward with developing an RFP for the engineering design and replacement of 3 PLC systems supporting the nitrification product, biofor process, and RO process. The goal of the project is to improve reliability and maintainability, ensure long-term availability of replacement components, and reduce the risk of unplanned outages. The agreement with TORC also includes fixed payments to cover the capital costs associated with replacing these aging PLC systems, and staff will return to TORC for approval as the project moves into future phases. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay. Director Gay still in? Okay. So for this one, and if I read this right, the Torrance Refinery is gonna pay for this?
That's correct.
Okay. Notwithstanding that, we have our DSC project, and so, or DCS project. So wouldn't that address some of these issues?
The DCS upgrade project is really to handle the backbone of the DCS, so the Emerson controllers. That's what we're calling the level A or category A controllers. The PLCs in questions here are located on the B level, which is the lower kind of third-party side of the DCS. So that's all the Modicon PLCs that aren't included in the DCS upgrade scope.
Alright, so this is the stuff that are going to be touched.
That's correct.
And our $20 million project.
That's correct.
And Torrance is paying for it.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. All right, last item we have is the operations update.
Chair Alvarez, this is the monthly update.
We can skip it if you want.
It is your call. I can give a high-level oral quick one or presentation, whatever
Why don't
you
you
like.
give us a high level one?
Okay.
All here.
Sounds great. Thank you. I'll acknowledge that Mitchell did show up here, always willing to present. And I want to give a kudos to our compliance department. Without a supervisor for some time, everyone's taking extra duty. So thank you for that, including in our distribution department. Thank you, Chandler, stepping in, vacations, departed positions. At a high level, each department's working hard. It's summertime. We know this in Potable, but in Recycle 2, lots of leaks. I'll give credit to Inframark again for really stepping up while we have vacancies, able to answer our calls, represent us well when we can't get out there. And I'll note to the director and the board that we are already starting on looking at the RFP process, developing a new scope so that we'll be ready by the end of the year to go back out for the distribution contract. The compliance department is doing a lot of work and doing auditing. We do have a violation that we received on our brine permit for JMM. That is so far a non-monetary one. That's a result of some, the EPA website, I think due to some cuts they've had, their system was down for quite a long time. We use that system to cross-check with with a lot of the regional board side, the state system. And as a result, we missed some of those, but we got a third-party audit. We have an internal audit going on. We also have been working with the regulators, documenting some of the issues we've had. They're working with us, and we're kind of turning that around and even doing some different checklists and collaboration with our contract operators to make sure it's very clear who does what. And finally, maybe I'll mention that we often don't focus on this building unless we're asking for money and repairs, but we did include a slide to talk about some of the energy savings. There's, believe it or not, we have some AQMD and other regulations that relate to this building. And one of them, we replaced most of the lights with LED in compliance with some of the new regulation that will save us costs. As we know, all the utility costs are going up. We just received a water cost 30% rise in our potable water, even here at the building over time. And so thank you. I know we weren't going to the slides, but this one just does a nice highlight at the end here. Nelson's done a nice job of replacing that, making sure to show how much energy we're saving. It kind of can counteract against some of those costs. And the next initiative will be some window tinting on the hottest side of the building. We did sort of a preliminary, and we think that'll help us make sure to save more energy on the heating and cooling. That's the high level quickie. Any other information?
Director, I'd like to just point out a couple of things. We do have the barrier graph in there, and I'd be remiss if I didn't direct your attention to it for the
I'm looking at it right now.
for the first month. It's looking quite impressive already. Yesterday's F&A committee, the water sales report that committee saw would have shown approximately 800-ish acre feet of production for recycled water above, above the budgeted number. Actually, that's not it. I'm thinking recycled water, yeah. And so kind of look to put that same sales graph into this monthly report, just so that depending on which committee you're on, you see that. But it is a strong start to this fiscal year as far as recycled water production. Wanted to also note, as Uzi mentioned, the contract operator for the distribution system. Staff is going to be looking very closely at that scope of work and the contract, looking to increase or improve areas of that scope and develop an RFP by the end of this calendar year so that we can advertise that first part of 2027 and have it ready for the end of the current contractor's term of, I think, end of June 2027. So, yeah, no shortage of work to be done in the engineering and operations groups.
Thank you. So with that, there's no closed session. I don't have any further comments. We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Director.